Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul. I'm your host this evening. And yes, it's a Tuesday at 8 p.m. I'm sorry, folks. Normally it's Monday, 8 p.m. Yes, it was a public holiday and all that kind of stuff. And I just can't afford Stephen Harris's extra money that he has to get paid if he is being paid on a public holiday. So clearly I had to put it back a day because I just couldn't afford Mr. Harris's appearance fee. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, not too bad, Paul. Hey, somewhere in the world, it's still Monday, so hey, we got both those days covered. But hey, always a privilege to be on the TDM, and it's been 2 or 3 weeks away. But hey, great to be back as we start heading down towards the business end. Not quite at the business end of Super Rugby. There's still a few bit to play out, isn't there? About six odd rounds to go. But yeah, getting exciting.
That's right. Yeah, 6 more. Yeah, because we've just completed round 10. We've obviously 16 rounds in the season. So yes. So So sorry, folks. I've been a bit hit and miss these last sort of 4 weeks, I guess. Now it has been so. Yeah, we're going to miss Cornflake for a little while now because he's on his big long holiday overseas. So enjoying WrestleMania and all of that kind of stuff. So hopefully we'll get him back before the end of the season. I've just realised I've not even changed. We need to change over from being the standoff to being the DrivingMaul show. There we go. Got to change the graphics, and there we go. You got to actually try and be a little bit professional, Paul. You've got standards to maintain. Anyway, let's crack on then. So a couple of news items. Not much going on in the news really. That I've kind of really noticed, apart from a couple of player signings really around the Auckland side in particular. Mark Talia heading off overseas to Japan. Interesting move for someone who people might consider to be a first choice All Black currently on the wings, and also Rieko Ioane decided that that thing that Geordie Barrett's doing. They're now calling him sort of best player in the world or most important player in the world, kind of stuff, playing for Leinster. Perhaps I should go and have a bit of that. And has decided that he's going to take 2026, have a Super Rugby sabbatical, and head over there and give Leinster a bit of a go. Any kind of a bit surprised by Mark Talia, maybe? I mean, I say he's he's inked into the All Blacks squad, wider squad at the very least, and I say arguably first choice along with I guess he's fighting it out there with Caleb Clarke and Sever Reece. And Sever Reece got out of favour last year, so I'd say Caleb Clarke and Mark Talia with Will Jordan at the back is the kind of first choice back three at the moment for the All Blacks.
Yeah, definitely a surprise in the case of Talia being a first choice All Black winger. He's probably the first picked out of the two wingers. Usually we often see a little bit of alternation on the other wing, but it did come as a surprise. But I suppose at 28 years old, there's probably the opportunity just to basically earn a little bit of cash. Just on the Rieko Ioane front, to me that was a huge surprise, Paul. Especially probably not a sabbatical, never a surprise, but I suppose the destination is a wee bit of a surprise. But he's obviously, like you say, looked at how Geordie Barrett's going, and it just seems to me that Geordie Barrett, the rugby I've seen, looks like he's improved his game, added some stuff to his game. So maybe Rico's thinking down the same line. So it might make a change that he's heading off to Ireland, and he won't be booed at, but maybe supported, maybe by Leinster at least, maybe not so much the other three clubs.
I was going to go. Sexton was is a rugby god in Leinster, so it's an interesting choice from that. Now you brought that up, I forgot about that. But yes, will the fans actually want him there?
Yeah, and will Johnny Sexton and Rieko Ioane get together for a beer? That's the real big question.
Deary me. So yes, interesting one there. Actually, an interesting venue for him to actually go to, considering his history with Johnny Sexton on that one. Mark Talia, and look, we've talked before about how, it went from being guys who are in basically retirement, we'd had overseas, then it was guys who were younger, who hadn't quite made it going overseas. Now to have an actual starting All Black going overseas, this is taking it to another level, really, especially as he's doing it before the World Cup. He's not waiting till after the World Cup, I don't think. So this is his last season here, before the World Cup, heading off So yeah, big surprise that one that he's doing before the World Cup. After a World Cup, I would get it, but yeah. So maybe he's had some chats with Razor, and perhaps he's not in such a great position after all. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, he'll be available for Ireland in 2028 by my reckoning, Paul.
No, yeah, that's residency doesn't count for that one. It's only.
Okay.
But there was talk about James O'Connor, of course, being available for the All Blacks, because he does have parentage or some sort of lineage here to New Zealand, but apparently his appearance playing for the Australia A team means that actually he's not available, and he is still tied to Australia for that one. Just going to see where he was. No, he's born in Australia, so I guess it must be through parentage that he has got some sort of link back to New Zealand. Then, so James O'Connor, whilst there was a little bit of talk about it, that has been snuffed out pretty quickly on that one. So let's jump into then the games. I mean, we didn't discuss round 9 because we didn't have a show, so I'll just very quickly run through those scores. The Hurricanes lost at home to the Crusaders 24-31, a pretty close one. The Waratahs saw off the Chiefs 21-14 in what was a shocking result, especially as we look at this weekend. The Blues beat Moana Pacifica 36-17. Moana Pacifica had been tracking well until that point, and to have a big loss like that against the Blues, who were really in the doldrums, was again a bit of a surprise result, really. Highlanders saw off the Drua 43-20. Been a tough season for the Drua, let's be honest. And then the Reds lost to the Brumbies 26-39 at home. The Brumbies shown themselves to be a real force in this competition. Any sort of particular things you want to call out from that for that round just quickly, before you could go into more depth for this round?
Yeah, I suppose the only real thing the big upset of that round was the Waratahs beating the Chiefs, and we possibly saw the try of the season scored by the Waratahs in that particular game. That to me was a surprise. It just almost seemed like the Chiefs really didn't front up that night. There was a lot of endeavour, but listen, the Waratahs matched them and probably on the night deserved the win, and a great defensive effort in those closing minutes. And the Brumbies beating the Reds, we certainly didn't expect that result from the Brumbies. The Brumbies showing that they're a really good wet weather team as well, and I think that may have actually been their 4th away win of the year. So playing away from Canberra, not an issue for the Brumbies. The rest of the results, if we look at it, pretty much went the way that we thought it would. The Crusaders got out to that big lead, and then the Hurricanes right at the end. Even though the Crusaders were down to 13 players, God, that seems like a couple of weeks ago, doesn't it, Paul? Couldn't take advantage with the extra numerical numbers out on the field. So they would be disappointed. But once again, the Crusaders' defence at the end, pretty much the go. And of course, Blues, Moana Pacifica. Yeah, this was a case of two brothers having a bit of a scrap in the backyard, and the big brother always had the little brother at arm's length.
That was the one that surprised me, because look, I expected the Crusaders. Look, they've put last season behind them. Really, one of the form teams. Not surprised by that win. Obviously, the Waratahs, a big shock against the Chiefs. The Blues, look, I think they had one win at that point, or they really were going to that one as this kind of struggling side, hadn't got the game going. Moana were having their best season to date, and the wheels just fell off for Moana all of a sudden. And yeah, you say they were just held at arm's length, but I just wasn't expecting that performance from the Blues. The Blues really fronted up to get that one, and then guess one of those ones where we're not going to give up our backyard, probably as you said. On that one, So to me, I was a bit surprised by the margin of that one. I thought the mine would be a lot closer than that, to be honest.
Yeah, a couple of. I was going to say, Paul, the other thing that surprised me in that game, mate, I think they rested Pellegrini, if I recall. So that was a little bit of a surprise, to say the least. But I think the Blues really took Moana Pacifica into a game that was a little bit foreign to them. Just walking in through the front door and forcing them into an arm wrestle. And that's what it came down to at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I understood. I agree. I did really was surprised by Garden Bishop starting. I was wondering what was going on there. So and a strange one to be resting. As you say, this is a. And I don't know. Yeah, I can't really afford to rest players against any team. And this one to win in Auckland would have been. Look, they had some big results this year. Don't get me wrong, but that would be a massive result, particularly for the supporter base. Let's on Monday morning around the water coolers, or Monday morning going to school. As a Moana Pacific, you can really that would have given you a real opportunity to stick it up the Blue supporters. So yeah, that's very surprised that was the one they chose for his rest. Anyway, moving on then to this weekend, and again, Super Rugby messing around with schedules. So we have no idea how many games we're going to get on a Friday night or a Saturday. So only one game on Friday night in the end, not the normal two, which again, you get to the end of the first game and think, cool, I'll just go get myself I got to half an hour to get myself ready and to just go to the toilet, get myself a beer and stuff. And then, there's nothing to watch. All a bit strange, but hey, Super Rugby, just get your games, get it sorted. And if you want to mess around on public holiday weekends, hold games on the public holidays like the Monday, right? I mean, why just do it for Friday and Saturday? So anyway, on Friday night we had the Crusaders versus the Blues, the team that struggled last year against the team that is struggling this year, really. But this was a wet game. Let's be honest. We obviously look for the North Island here. We had a typhoon coming through. A cyclone coming through. Not as bad as Gabrielle, but still really bad weather coming through. So even down in the South Island, it was a wet one. Let's be honest. And we kind of saw that with some of the stats. Turnovers conceded 20 by the Blues, 13 by the Crusaders. So be able to hold on to the ball a little bit better. First up, we had Tamaiti Williams bashing over from short range to give the Crusaders the lead, and Kamara putting over a real nice kick. And then B here nipped over to even things up. That was around the ruck, wasn't it? So one ruck one way, one ruck the other way, and then went straight through the middle of the two of them. So well managed there, pulling the defence around. Both sides then missed penalties before Will Jordan, after the hooter, went over to give the Crusaders a valuable 14-7 lead at half time. In the second half, they come out early, and Leo Willie, who's having a cracking season this year, goes over and stretches it out to a two-score lead at 17-7. With the Blues only scoring once in that first half, with the wet weather handling a disaster for both, and just no one else put things together. A two-score lead, and you're thinking, you know what, that's probably enough to put it to bed, to be honest. But the Blues came back. Hoskins to 2-2, leading try scorer last year. Not so much this year, but still, he came over and scored a try. And then, we've already had, for Will Jordan's try, not William Havili, the other Havili. I've gone blank, the older Havili. Dummies, takes the line, passes behind all the defenders. Fantastic, lovely pass with Will Jordan. But no, Hosking to 2-2. It's like, you know what? Anything you guys can do, I can do even better. Looks to the right. It's in his right hand. Flicks the ball over out to the left from behind himself for something that looks like basically just throwing the ball away. But no, I think that was actually a proper pass. He was intending. He saw where the space was and somehow got the ball there. Pass of the season to put Pat Lam in. Barrett couldn't knock over the extras though. But a penalty not long afterwards put the Blues in an unlikely lead, heading an hour just over 10 minutes to go. James O'Connor comes on, shows his experience, knocks over two penalties to seal the win for the Crusade. Well, first to put nearly equal points, and then after the hooter to avoid extra or golden point, he knocks over the extra penalty to win the game for the Crusaders. And a player who has been booed in New Zealand and has had many critics in New Zealand suddenly becomes this this wonder veteran who knows how to close out games, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, it seems like many months ago he had his critics. I know everybody was lambasting Rob Penny and the Crusaders as an organisation when James Connor was selected. But you know what? He's turned up trumps, hasn't he? You know, he's been a great support there for the two young guys, Kamara and Ray Hunter, who unfortunately has been injured for a good part of the season. But boy, he's come on in these key moments and just settled this team. So big ups to James O'Connor and kicking those two important penalty goals. Just a couple of takeaways from this game. Listen, first of all, a huge 80 minutes from Fraser Newell, and how important was his scrummaging in that last 8 minutes. Also pulling two penalties against a couple of rookie props. Listen, full credit to Rob Penny for actually giving him the whole 80 minutes. I thought that was key. A couple of other key things for me as well. Listen, the Blues exerted a lot of pressure. If you look at the stats, they had most of the ball, probably most of the field position, but there were times they turned down very kickable penalties. But Paul, I know they all seem to kick to the corner these days, but I think you've got to recognise when you're in an actual arm wrestle that you've got to look to build the scoreboard and take those points that are on offer. Because even if you miss,
especially with wet weather rugby, and it was seriously wet,
100%. But the other side of it, you miss the kick, you actually stay on attack. You're going to get the ball back, so you're going to have another crack at it. Of course, you kick the penalty, that's good. You add to the scoreboard, and I just thought, the Blues probably missed a trick. I know first three penalties, I think they kicked to the corner, lost two line outs, and then eventually got it right. And of course, that's when Josh Behere scored his try. So that's sort of one of my takeaways of the weekend. Listen, we put a lot of pressure on the players, but I think we should have an expectation of the officials as well, because I do believe there were two or three decisions clearly missed by the official. We saw a penalty in this, and one of them was crucial because it was close to half time. The Crusaders were given a piggyback with a penalty. Like the player, he said that Dalton Papali needed to release the player, but the player's knee was never on the ground. We looked at the replay, so we kind of wondered what the referee was looking at. Not long after that, he penalised the Blues again for a player being taken out in the air. I'm still looking for that player being taken out in the air from the line out. So, sometimes we get very contentious calls in rugby, especially at the breakdown, and you think at the end of the day, well, you shrug your shoulders and go, well, okay, he's right there. He can see if a player is not supporting his feet or forward or the ball or hasn't rolled away from the ruck. So I'm quite happy to give a bit of leeway to the officials. But when you're seeing obvious ones, like we saw on the weekend, I just think that's got it right. Listen, at the end of the day, Paul, probably not the reason the Blues actually lost the game. Once again, my third point is, and it's probably across the board for a lot of New Zealand teams, and we'll touch on another team later in the program, is just how they're what's the word I'm looking for? They're making an absolute meal of trying to close out these games, Paul, playing in the wrong field position, just tactically not getting it right. I mean, it's a wonderful defensive effort from the Crusaders throughout this game. They had to defend quite a few phases, but I thought also there was some very, very poor rugby from the Blues, going full on contact, head on head, or not head on head, but going into contact. And you saw the one time that they actually moved the ball a little bit wider, and they were able to have a mismatch with Hoskins Tutu, one on one with a defender, and he's a hard guy to stop at the best of times. But when you get him one on one with footwork, he's going to win every time. So I don't know whether that's a coaching aspect or a leadership aspect, but the Blues will look back at this result and still be scratching their heads at their review today.
Yeah, look, 187 tackles by the Crusaders, only 75 by the Blues, which tells you there you go. The Blues had the ball twice as much as the Crusaders. So at the end of the day, if you just as a simple way of looking at it, yeah, my stats don't have possession and stuff, but that's essentially that. When you're tackling, that gives you a good gauge. So yeah, they had all the ball. They just coughed it up far too often, made too many mistakes, and the Crusaders, defended for their lives and held on. And played a better wet weather rugby at the end of the day. So that was Saturday. That was Friday night. On to Saturday. Then we had the Drua at home. Now look, the Drua have not been great this season. Even at home, they've lost a couple already. But they've been this was then a mid-afternoon game. This should be a hot game. It should be perfect for them. Everything should be in on their side for this one. And look, they started well. Now for a team now that we think of as being, you know what, throw it around, have fun, score tries. How do they build their score? With penalties, right? And they knocked over a couple of threes before, and they got their first try. Gleeson did come back with one to make it 13-7. But look, they even tried a drop goal as well in this one at the near the end, but that didn't go over. In fact, they tried two drop goals, sorry, but one in the first half. And so they led 18-7 at half time. Kept it ticking over with more penalties. So in this game, both sides scored 2 tries, and yet the final score is 28-14. Right. So the difference is that the Drua took their penalties, or took their kicks at goal. From a disciplinary point of view, 8 penalties to 10. Look, it's not a massive difference, but and when you think that Valentini missed 2 penalties in the second half, Valentini missed 2 penalties and a drop goal. Armstrong Ravula missed a drop goal and a conversion. They with those 5 kicks, they could have been even further ahead without actually having to score any more tries. So look, well played by just one try in the second half by for the Waratahs. Well, it's actually not sorry true. It was 3 tries to 2 because of a penalty try at the end. God, look, 21-7. It's comfortably the Drua's game. It's close to the scoreboard, but it wasn't really. I don't think really it was that close. And sure, a shock thing. The Waratahs could have sent it to extra time, but so they're messing around at the back. It goes into their own goal. It's been fumbled. It gets fumbled forwards. It gets knocked on by the Waratahs, who then an offside player picks it up, Julian Surveyor, and so they blow penalty because deliberately offside picking up the ball, and then it's like, well, hang on, if you remove the player who did the penalty, what would have happened? Well, one of the 3 Drua players around him would have put the ball down. Therefore, it's a penalty try, and Julian Surveyor gets a yellow card after the game. Basically, there's no more play because that penalty, obviously, there's no conversion because it's a penalty try, and suddenly it becomes 28-14. So perhaps it was closer than the scoreline suggests, but I don't think it was in gameplay. Not the best of games, but best of quality of games. But the Drua just showed you how to manage a win.
Yeah, I think probably that last penalty try was a case of Joseph Suali coming from rugby league. Probably just thought he was still back in the 13-man code and couldn't help himself. But
sorry, Lee, not Julius.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm saying the J and the S, and I've got
no,
name. Sorry.
That's a good pull. Just one of those things. It would have looked odd if he just sort of stood there and let them score. So listen, probably just an instinctive thing. As for the game itself, I did not find this game very enjoyable. There
wasn't any offside once you got into the end goal.
Yeah,
so
apparently there is rule. I saw it somewhere. Rule 10.1. You can still have an offside in the end goal area. It's crazy. I suppose so. It's something
you're allowed to come around if there's like a scrum or something. You're allowed to come around the scrum at that point You don't have to retreat to the back foot or anything like that. So there's not that offside. But,
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think in this case he prevented a try being scored, and that's why the official, the way it was explained. But I've got to be honest, I did not enjoy this game. Listen, the Drua, if they put this together, they could have put a big score on the Waratahs, but I just got frustrated with the amount of times that they got into open space, made breaks, and just threw no-look passes. And listen, whilst they're, the Fijian Drua are one of the great entertainers in this competition, do you want to be entertainers or do you want to be guys that can actually win games? And there are times they must be terribly frustrating to coach. In fact, both sides at times I thought looked really lethargic, Paul. I don't know if it was hot over there or dewy. I really didn't know what the issue was, but it just seemed to me none of these teams could really get anything going at the end of the day.
I mean, to be fair to the Waratahs, there were a couple of injuries early on, so they were using their bench in the first half. They had players, but but even so, having come off the back of beating the Crusaders, who are the top team, beating the Chiefs, who are the top team in the league, to then losing to the team who's bottom of the table in the league.
Actually, Paul, you make a really good point. They had that win over the Chiefs, and their coaching staff made all these changes, but they're going into a bye next week. For mine, it doesn't make much sense. Surely you roll out your strongest side again, and try and pick up the win, and then head to the bye. So I think they've just left themselves a little bit exposed by doing this.
And get yourself that momentum going into the bye week. Great for really good, really important for the Drua, but yeah, not great for the not great for the Tars at all. Next up, down in Pocono again for now I thought Pacific were supposed to be keeping themselves in Albany as their home ground, but I don't know what's going on with that team. All over the shop. But yeah, back in Pocono to host the Brumbies. They in that first half they get held up over the line. They have a try disallowed because they weren't back 10 at the line out, and that was Julian Severa in that one that didn't have the try disallowed. And they also missed a penalty. So coming up towards half time, and it's still 0-0, and you're wondering, geez, when's the last time I saw a half of rugby in Super Rugby that had no score? And then we had a moment of mayhem. Yeah, sure, we had a moment of mayhem at the end of the Drua versus the Waratahs, but again we had another one here with broken field play, with the ball going being fly hacked and kicked backwards and forwards, and the Waratahs end up with it. Sorry, not the Brumbies end up with it, and they've got this guy called Tool who's pretty quick, and so a little grubber in behind, and Tool outpaces the Tuamafula, who didn't look like he was really running at full pace, and then he spotted Tool and went, "Oh no!" And it was all too little, too late. Now the misconversion meant that it was only 5-0 or 0-5 at half time for that one. But in the second half, the Brumbies come out and score 3 unanswered tries to win this one 0-24. 2 weeks ago, we're talking about how this is the best season that Moana have had, and how things are going great for them. 2 big losses on the bounce now to the Blues, and then getting nilled at home by the Brumbies. And boy, oh boy, suddenly the wheels have fallen off for Moana. And I don't know, it's all gone wrong, really.
Yeah, well, we shouldn't forget that they were missing their talisman, Ari Savia. I thought he was just an absolute huge loss. I see they're also missing Alan Craig, who basically calls a lot of their lineouts as well. Now, I'm not too sure if Craig is injured or not. So there was another combination that actually didn't start last week. I think the starting combination when they played the Blues last week was Slade and Allen. So this week they had a completely different combination. Michael Curry and of course the Englishman Tom Savage started in this game.
And to be fair, so they did lose. They lost 5 lineouts in this game.
Absolutely. So that was huge as well. But I think for me, once again, I think, as I said when we were reviewing the Blues Crusaders game, I think you've got to recognise sometimes when you're in an arm wrestle and you're getting opportunities to kick points. I personally would have kicked for poles. You got somebody like Pellegrini, who's a pretty accurate goal kicker. Okay, he missed, and the irony was he went for a shot in the 40th minute and missed it. But I think they could have brought him into the game a lot earlier and just kept the scoreboard ticking over. And listen, going into half time, even if they'd gone into half time 0-0, the Brumbies were always going to be hard to beat with the breeze behind them in the second half. But what impressed me about the Brumbies was their defence in the first half. It was pretty amazing, the way that they tackled it. You kind of look through their side. They've got some quality players. They've got some guys who, Alala Frost, Hooper, Valentini. Well, Valentini I thought he was impressive, but I was also impressed with Tully Tuilima, who played for Auckland last year in the NPC as a lock. Boy, he was a real presence. That was a big back row, and boy, I thought at times that they monstered the Moana back row. I thought the best of the Moana back rows was Tupou Tealoa. I thought he was very good. Disappointing game from Whailangi on this occasion. He's been strong, and probably Patrick Peregrini's poorest game in a Moana jersey. But I just thought they could have brought him into play a lot earlier through his goal kicking pool. But big ups to the Brumbies at the end of the day, and of course picking up a try bonus as well in this game, if I'm correct. So.
Yep.
Once again, they're showing that travelling for them is not an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And now what they're look, the record is 6 wins and 3 losses. I'm trying to think where they're just quickly to check and see if their losses have all been at home or not. No, they lost away to the Waratahs. Lost away to the Chiefs, which most teams would do, and then they lost. I can't find. They lost. No, they lost at home to the Force. That was a surprising one, wasn't it? Yeah, the high scoring 42 to 45.
And that game against the Chiefs, if we recall, they were right in that game with about 10 minutes to go, and it was only really a late try that made the score look a lot better than what it really was for the Chiefs. Yeah,
exactly. It was a 1-score game until there was a penalty on 77 minutes, and then a try after the hooter that pulled it out and stopped the Brumbies from getting a losing bonus point in that one. So the Brumbies. Look, a lot of people have been sort of down on the Brumbies this season. Not expecting much from them. I think that second round win against the loss, to the Force, also dampened a lot of expectations. But they're quietly going about their business and doing very well, and sat third in the table now. That's that home. It's not semi-final, is it? Whatever, it's not quarter-final, whatever it is. First round of playoffs. They will actually. They're looking good for that to get home advantage at the moment with that one. Moving on then to moving down the road to Hamilton, where the Chiefs took on the Highlanders. Look, the Highlanders got the first. We had an exchange of penalties early on before Imani Nawara back in has side got himself got the first try. But the Highlanders managed to even things up at 10-all. Only for Damon McKenzie to put over a penalty to give the Chiefs a small lead of 13-10 at half time. However, we've seen this before this season with the Chiefs, and Clayton McMillan clearly said something, or somebody said something at half time, because the Chiefs came out in the second half scoring 5 unanswered tries to take this one out to 46-10. Yeah, they didn't need a late try in this one to make the scoreline look look dominating. But yeah, to go from being right in the game at half time to getting blown away in the second half, it's going to be really disappointing for the Highlanders.
Yeah, listen, I think so. I think that first 20 odd minutes, I think the Chiefs dominated possession anyway, although they would be kind of disappointed. They made a lot of mistakes and they were turning ball over, and I think that was probably the only thing that was keeping the Highlanders in the game. And then we saw that little burst, that beautiful try finished off by Kotai, the prop after 28 minutes, converted by Miller, and we thought, oh, listen, we've got a game on our hands. But then they concede their penalty just before half time, and then 33 unanswered points in the second half was a pretty sad tale for the Highlanders. You could just see there was a huge difference in depth if we kind of look at the lineups and see what the actual Chiefs could pull off the paddock in the second half. Boy, that's a pretty strong bench. Leonard Brown, Jacob Ratama, Boshier, Tupou, O'Neill, Prophet, and Takiaho, who was running around pretty freely in the second half. You once again you look at the Highlanders, what they had to bring off the bench, and it was no contest. I thought there were a couple of players though for the Highlanders were pretty. It was great to see Joseph Ratu Mai Tavuki Nitkins, back on the paddock. What's that? Maybe his second game back, and yep. I thought he looked really good. Umaga Jensen looked pretty good as well. I thought Tamataba Nawa had a very quiet game by his standards, Paul. But listen, I just don't think they had the firepower up front. Once again, another good performance from Holland, but he took a knock before halftime, and I thought he was a bit of a passenger for the first 20 minutes. In the second half, looked to have the calf heavily strapped, and I noticed that he was hobbling a lot of the time. No, simply just didn't have the depth. They were getting done up front as well. Leonard Brown, if you think back to the first half, I think he conceded about two or three penalties at scrum time. And boy, for the Chiefs, they were pretty impressive, and I think none more than Luke Jacobson at number 8, who just seemed to show up everywhere in this game. Very, very impressive performance.
Yeah, looking 23 turnovers by the Highlanders. You've got to look after your ball a lot better than that. Now, sure, look, defensive pressure at the breakdown. It's not entirely you can be forced into that by a team, but yeah, that's a lot of turnovers to concede to a team like the Chiefs, who have got counter-attacking weapons that can really take advantage of that when they get that kind of ball. One of your comments there about penalties at the scrum time. Look, there used to be this criticism of Northern Hemisphere European rugby, and that they only used to scrummage for penalties. They never used to scrummage for attack. And yet nowadays we seem to be hearing that a lot from time about teams scrummaging for penalties here in New Zealand. And there's nothing negative mentioned about it. It's not saying it's a negative play, which seems a bit hypocritical from my point of view. But I'd rather the scrummage used to restart play rather than to be used as a penalty machine. To be honest, I'm not a fan of that down here. Final game of the weekend saw the Hurricanes travel over to play the Western Force. Now, I've already mentioned that win earlier by the Force over the Brumbies away from home. So the Force have been a bit sort of up and down. The Hurricanes as well. So they've really been able to, so both sides be able to sort of get results. And an early try put the Hurricanes in the lead, only for the Force to come back with Braden Kunzel pretty quickly to even things up, and then a late try for Greeley saw them take a 14-5 lead. Come back into the second half then, and Harkin gets a try and knocks it over the conversion himself, whilst a second try for Fianganafo meant that the Hurricanes took had a 14-17 lead heading in to the close. And look, The Force get themselves close. They get a penalty, and it's like, oh, do we go corner and go for the win, or do we knock over the 3 and take this to extra time? And look, they do the sensible thing, knocking over the 3, taking it out to golden point. And I think probably you're referring to when you earlier were talking about New Zealand teams not being able to close out games. You're probably talking about the Hurricanes, because look, they had this one in the bag, and they just had to see it out. They didn't make the Force play in their own half. Come into extra time then, and Donaldson has a couple of goes with a penalty and a drop goal and misses both. Rob Lowe has after the hooter had a drop goal that never looked like it was going anywhere near the post. To be honest, it didn't look set or anything. They really did not set themselves up for that drop goal. So the whole team got that wrong, not just Love. And that meant that even with golden point and an extra 10 minutes of play, this one ends up as a draw.
Yeah, it turned into a crazy old game, didn't it? I actually thought with about 17 to go that the Hurricanes were actually taking control of this game, and when they got ahead, I thought it was just really a case of, well, just let's manage where we are on the field. And when you manage a game, I think you need your best players on the field, and once again, we saw the best halfback in New Zealand pulled off the paddock in terms of Roygaard. I know coaches have these set times, but that was an important game to the Hurricanes, a must win game, and I think you needed to have Roygaard on with his experience. Couple of other little oddities in this game, of course, Callum Harkin, who I thought had an outstanding game, and boy, he's deceptively quick, isn't he? Made an outstanding break in the first half, and you almost got the impression that Punivai was actually struggling to keep up with him as he put him away. And of course, he made this wonderful break in the second half, and seemed like he only had about 10 meters to run, but in his wisdom decided to throw an inside pass, which was just absolutely nuts, and I don't think you'd ever see that in his career again. He just really needed to back himself, and he probably would have finished off a try that would have possibly have taken the Hurricanes out of sight.
To me, that kind of situation is where he's not being given confidence either by the senior players or by the coach to really back himself. And has been told, look around, play. Don't just you're more than just a runner. You've got to be able to pass the ball as well. And I think that's a second thought there. To me, that's there's something wrong with the setup around how he's been encouraged to play for that to happen.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. I thought the other thing that was a bit weird about this game was some of the decisions of the officials. Damon Murphy. It appeared to me that the Hurricanes had the dominant scrum, but even on a dominant scrum, he seemed to find penalties against the Hurricanes, and you kind of look at some of them, and probably Ben Robertson, the tight head for the Force, probably deserves a little bit of credit on a couple of occasions. I actually thought he sort of backed off on the hit, which saw Xavier Numia go to ground a couple of times. But maybe times like that, you just need a little bit more support from your AR. Listen, the Hurricanes did well to fight their way back into the game, and I still enjoyed some of the performances. I think Balin Sullivan, for me, just gets better and better. Peter Umaga Jensen almost looks to be finding his feet as a midfielder, and I thought Harkin, I don't know if that was his first full start in the 15 jersey, but boy, they look like they've just got a right mix there with Ruben Love in the 10 jersey and Harkin in that 15 jersey.
Yeah, we'll see. I love. I mean, I don't know. I love. I think Love at 15 is also good. I think so. I'm not sold with him coming to 10 personally at the moment. Maybe I'll be wrong, proven wrong. I hope I am if that's what happens. But yeah, no, it's we'll see if it's. I hope it's not just one of these ones of how do we get our best players on the pitch rather than how do we get our players playing in the best positions, kind of thing. on that one.
I was going to say, Paul, one thing I actually did enjoy about this game was the battle between the two sevens, between Tizano and of course Duplessis Kirifi. I actually had both of these players in my in my fantasy rugby team. I wanted to cover both my bets, but the battle between these two was just absolutely outstanding. Both very good players over the ball, both tough on the carry. So that was worth the price of admission, I reckon.
Yep, and Simon just welcome it in the evening. He's going to let us know that Sri Lanka have knocked out Malaysia as far as the Rugby World Cup qualifying goes, and Sri Lanka will now be in the main Asian qualification along with Hong Kong, South Korea, and the United Emirates there for that one. Obviously, Japan have automatically qualified for the Rugby World Cup already from Asia. So where does that leave us on the table now then? Well, the Chiefs at the top of the table on 32 points, with the Crusaders in second, also on 32 points. So just points difference at the moment, holding these two apart. And that really comes down to the Chiefs, greater score, has scored more points, but tries for 42 for the Chiefs, tries for the Crusaders 43. So the Crusaders have scored more tries, but scored less points. So yes, so the boot at the moment is keeping the Chiefs ahead of the Crusaders. Dropping back then, the Brumbies then are 4 points behind in third place, but 5 points clear of the Reds in fourth, who are very closely followed by the Force and the Waratahs on 23, 22 and 21 points there. So very tight amongst the Australian teams. We still have 4 Australian teams in the finals picture at the moment to 2 New Zealand teams. It's a 3-point gap then back to the Hurricanes, who are on 18 points, with the Blues and Highlanders both on 17. So they're the guys who are looking at trying to get into those playoff places. Moana Pacifica back on 15. Look, they've got the same number of points, same number of wins as the Hurricanes, Blues and Highlanders, but obviously the Hurricanes with that draw and also bonus points mean that the Moana Pacifica are a bit further back with that one. And then at the bottom of the table on 11 points are the Fijian and Drua. Their win not enough to climb them off the bottom, but definitely closing the gap on Moana Pacifica there. Looking forward to next weekend, and we have 2 games on Friday night. Yes. So yes, you can watch 2 games on Friday night and back to 3 normal games on the Saturday. First up, we've got the Chiefs versus the Force, which I think we can safely say is a heavily favoured Chiefs there at $1.06 compared to $8 for the Force on that one. So yes, the Chiefs heavy favourites on that. So that's the most one-sided game of the weekend. So if you are looking at your fantasy, which we'll have a look at in a second, perhaps look at thinking about loading up on your Chiefs players. Next up, it's the battle of the colours. Reds versus the Blues. Look, the bookies got this one very close at $1.80 for the Reds and $1.95 for the Blues. The Reds, the Chiefs game, by the way, is in Tauranga, apparently. Simon lets us know. There at the Bay Oval at Mount Maunganui. I didn't hear lights. Wow, a 7 o'clock kickoff. That's going to be interesting on that one. Yeah, it's got to be the cricket ground. That's right, because the NPC ground doesn't have lights on that one. Reds versus the Blues. I've got to back the Reds on this one. I think, Stephen. What are your thoughts?
Boy, both of these teams are going to be desperate, aren't they? Probably Blues the more desperate. A loss will just make things a lot harder. Listen, I'm going to be loyal to the Blues. I'm going to pick the Blues. I think they're tracking in the right direction. And listen, I think of that Brumbies performance from a couple of weeks ago against the Reds, where they really the Brumbies dominated up front, and I think that's probably the Blues' avenue is to maybe go and once again, well, they only play one way, don't they, Paul? In through the front door. So I think we'll probably see more of the same.
But the Reds coming off a bye, so they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this one. It is a big game for them, as I've mentioned, with them sat fourth currently in the table and on a run of 2 losses at the moment. So they really need to arrest that slide. Then Moana Pacifica back in Albany Stadium to host the Fijian Drua. The Moana Pacifica at $1.42, the Fijian Drua at $2.70. Look, a couple of weeks ago, you'd be confident in Moana Pacifica winning this one, but after their 2 heavy losses, the Drua coming off the back of a win. I am still expecting Moana Pacifica to win this one because, as I say, the Fijian and Drua don't travel very well, but not with anywhere near the confidence I had 2 weeks ago in this team, especially if they don't get players back like Ardi Surveyor and their locks as well that we mentioned before.
Yeah, I agree. I'd still pick you're right in terms of what you say. 3 weeks ago, I would have said this is not even a contest. It would have been the easiest game to pick of the weekend, but it's probably the second easiest game to pick of the weekend. I'll still go for the home side though.
So sorry about the sound quality there, folks. Stephen's clearly got a bit of a connection issue, but on that one. Next up, we head down for Battle of the South Island with the Highlanders hosting the Big Brothers, the Crusaders. Highlanders at $3.80, the Crusaders at $1.22, and I think that's fair. To be honest with you, look, the Crusaders are tracking very well on the back of 3 wins now, whereas the Highlanders did get a win 2 weeks ago, but 1 win out of the last 5, not looking good for the Highlanders. So again, quite confident for the Crusaders in this one. They've also not had trouble so far, whereas the Highlanders, where are they coming back from? They're only up in Hamilton, weren't they? They weren't very far away, so not that much trouble for them back home. But I think again, resurgent Crusaders. I was
going to say though, Paul, that the Highlanders team, they'll be pretty battered after that loss to the Chiefs. There are a few players hobbling around, so it'll be interesting to see what sort of team that they put on the paddock. I think the Crusaders will just want to keep things going, just to keep the Chiefs at bay.
Hang on to the Chiefs' coattails after the what is likely to be a 5-point win. To be honest with you, on Friday night,
pretty much.
We round things off with the Brumbies versus the Hurricanes. Look, the Brumbies coming off the back of a nilling of a team. The Hurricanes couldn't finish things off over in Perth, so they've got quite a bit of travel to do as well. Been on the road for 2 weeks. Yeah, again. Brumbies at $1.45, Hurricanes at $2.60. I would probably have the Brumbies at bigger favourites than that, to be honest with you, for this one. So another home win on this one, I think.
Yeah, weather not looking too promising in Canberra on Saturday as well. They're expecting a little bit. Well, there's a 50% chance of rain, and they're talking that light drizzly rain as well. So very much going to be I think a forward orientated job, and the Brumbies have shown. And wet conditions seem to be following them around in 2025, Paul. Wet conditions are no issues for them.
No, they're not. So bringing up the fantasy table, I had a shocker at the weekend, down in 14th. Poor round for me. But I'm afraid I'm having to scroll down to the second page for you, down in 25th for the weekend.
Yeah.
So not a good round for you. Where is Cornflake down in 30th? So tough weekends for us on the show. Rugby Ramble at the top there led the way with let's see who's the try and make this a bit of a better view. Going with his Force and Riccatelli, then Alatoa on the front row. That I didn't really perform. I had him as well, but Wack had a fantastic showing for the Drua there with 60 points. Tizano, Karifi, Luca Jacobson. Luca Jacobson might have had a good game for you, Stephen, but he didn't do well for us. Well for the really on the old fantasy. But Tizano continues to deliver. Roygaard and then Harkin. Boy, he went with Harkin at 10, 71 points. Cracking choice there. Suoli is his captain. Not such a great choice there with only 36 points. And so it was only 18 originally and doubled. Quintapaya really, after starting really hot at the beginning of the season, has definitely cooled down recently. But that back line there did pretty well. With 68 and 59 points for them. Let Luke Carter 34, a bit more wishy-washy, but yeah, he had a good one there.
Gotta say, there's some pretty inspired sort of choices in these players that he's picked, and like you say, in and around his first five, Harkin, and also the Fijian and Drua fullback is Longan Massey, the and Drua fullback. Yeah, that's there's a couple of real inspired selections, and I probably think with myself, probably just been a little bit too conservative. The last couple of weeks, I'd sort of been averaging around about 500 points, but the last 2 weeks I've sort of dropped down to around about 420 and about 400 in the last couple of weeks, and I've got to say probably a little bit conservative. I'm never ever picking Rico Ioane again. I've taken a punt on him three or four times this year, and I've got to be honest, he hasn't delivered a heck of a lot.
Yeah, I mean, look at his side. If we're looking at the top scorers from the round, he had Harkin, Finganafo, Waka, Longamasi. So look, he had 3 out of the top 6 top scorers for the week. So yeah, he really did. Yeah, I would not have picked Harkin as being up there, but he so a couple of inspired choices with that one. As I say, looking forwards, I'm clearly going to have to change out Suolihi as the Waratahs have the bye, but Vai hasn't been doing the business. But then you look at say the Chiefs versus the Force. I'll be looking at loading up on Chiefs players with the Crusaders traveling down to the Highlanders. Yeah, I mean Reese has not been whilst he was doing well these last few rounds. Has been 7, 31, 20. Again, he's dropped off as well. His production hasn't quite been there with that one. So yeah, perhaps a few looking outside the box for a few players might be the way forwards, rather than perhaps the guys who have. If you look at the kind of total points scored, yes, you've got Mackenzie, Jordan, Tizano, Toole, Reese. Reese is still up there, but he hasn't really been delivering, as I say, the last few rounds. So maybe don't necessarily go with just the who are the top who are the top scorers, but maybe have a think about how some of them have faded over the last couple of rounds, folks, when you're doing your fantasy. So, look, we'll be back on next Monday with a roundup of the games from the week. So do join us next Monday at 8 p.m. as we have a chat about Super Rugby. Mr. Harris, thank you very much for joining me.
Not a problem. Just before you sign off, I just want to say how delighted I am to see Portia Woodman signing a 8-month contract that takes her through to an opportunity to play in another Rugby World Cup. Interestingly enough, she will be 34, I think, in July, maybe 34, 35 in July. But boy, got to say, based on her Super Opeki form, she was one of the form players of the competition and very, very influential. And once again, congratulations to the Blues for taking out Super Rugby Opeki and also Super Rugby crossover as well against the Waratahs. Outstanding performance.
Yeah, no, I've not been following that, but Portia Woodman was on the Aotearoa Rugby podcast last week, and her move to centre has been an interesting one as well. And I think that's possibly what's and she said, look at her learning new stuff. I think it's kept her really interested, has sort of helped her this time keep her interest and thoughts for extending. She had been thinking about heading overseas and playing some overseas and using it to travel. But that clearly isn't going to happen as she now has, I say, she's moved to the centres rather than on the wing, and is enjoying her rugby there. So yeah, well, congratulations to her, and good luck in heading up towards the Rugby World Cup. All right, catch you all next week, folks, and stay safe.